everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that even when we disagree, our fights are less contrived than anything you'll find in Cobra Kai. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
and we are talking about a great TV show based off of a decent movie franchise that has slowly turned into close to CW levels of teen drama. Are you excited for Cobra Kai?
I am. I think it's still good, but it is getting very dramatic, like you said.
It's really funny because it's like it's so clearly knew what it was at the beginning of like this 80s cheese and like the ambiguity of like, there are villains, but at the same time there's so much gray area and what can be, and it's like it's really hard to keep that going for as long as they've gone and for it to maintain that same like status quo.
Mhm.
And so and this season wasn't bad. We'll just start off right there and say this season wasn't bad,
No,
but it's definitely wearing out its welcome for sure.
I think. Well, I mean, I think it's clear there'll be one more season based on how it ends, but I don't know how much more they can go. I
Yeah.
mean, how many more Cobra Kai bad guys can they bring back? Like, you'll never guess who's coming back. Is it another Cobra Kai bad guy? Okay.
Real quick, so this is a spoiler filled episode, so we are talking about Cobra Kai's most recent season, and so if you haven't watched all of that, that's on Netflix right now. Feel free to go watch it. Or if you're like, you know what, I was done with it last season after all the drama, and like, yeah, I can get you. But what you were saying, like, oh, who are they going to bring back? It felt like the Ask a Ninja Pirates review was like, and then one day he comes by and he's a villain.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I do like though is that they didn't go back to the Johnny and Daniel being mortal enemies well. Because I
Yeah.
mean, they kept doing that. Like they're on the same page now. They're fighting. Now they're on the same page. Now they're fighting. And yeah, they might argue a little bit because they are inherently different people, and Johnny's always going to be Johnny, and like not always the funnest person to be around. But I mean, at least they're for the most part on the same side, and they don't have any big blowouts between them anymore because that was getting old.
One of the better things that I thought they did this season was early on when they kind of flipped their roles when Johnny's like starting to try and get his life together for the new kid, and Daniel has like that little meltdown with after he thinks his wife is going to leave him and he was embarrassed at the party, and he shows up and he's ready for a fight, and Johnny is the one to de-escalate it. I really liked that flip on its head, and that even after doing that, then Johnny's like, let me help you out, and showed really good emotional maturity. And I'm like, look at that. Characters can progress. They can grow up. It happens.
Yeah. I think Johnny is the character that they've done the best with in this whole series.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
I mean, there are other contenders, but that's my pick.
They have done a lot of change for Robbie, but I can't say it was all like good. But
Yeah.
he has gone through a lot of change, I think. Let's go ahead and just start off too with like different character arcs. So I think one of the big ones that we can start off with would maybe be Miguel, because when we meet him at the beginning is he's on the on the run might be the wrong term, but he's in Mexico trying to find his biological father and reconnect with him, and then they drop that storyline.
Yes, they did. They didn't do anything with it.
I don't get it.
They keep implying like, oh, like we ran away from him because he's such a bad guy, and now we get the implication that he's involved in so he's not just happy-go-lucky family guy, but it's just then they leave and that's it.
I thought they were setting the blocks for a later encounter. It's like, so how are they going to bring his dad up to America and have him somehow work with Terry Silver? Like I was waiting for that throughout the whole season, and to be fair, they easily could do something like that because they've now let the cat out of the bag with him. He is a bad dude.
Yeah.
And so they could do something in future seasons with him as a villain, but it felt like a setup for a payoff that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean they could do something next season, but I predict it's just going to be dropped.
Yeah. And his relationship with Sam, like, okay, great I didn't like Sam's arc this season. Because I get the idea of like wanting to find yourself, but I mean, they lampshade it with what Miguel says of like, well, you said you needed all this time and that you didn't want to be a part of all these things, and then here you are coming back to karate
Mhm.
and putting yourself right back in there. And sure, she's a teenager, but it felt a little stagnant to me for her
Yeah.
character.
Sam is not the most interesting of all the teenagers. I think she's probably on the lower end and lower spectrum there as far
Who's
as interest.
who's your top then? Who's your most interesting teenager award? MTA.
MTA. If you're talking about this season, it's a tough one. I think I might go with Tori actually.
Yeah.
She had a really good arc.
It's
Yeah.
always so funny to see. They are very obvious with what the arcs are going to be within
Hmm.
the first two episodes. They're like, oh, this season Tori's going to have moral gray area and she's going to start to cross over a little. Okay.
Yeah. Well, because Tori was always loyal to Kreese, and you can see that even now she's working with him in prison. And I'm still not positive if Kreese is 100% using her or if he actually has some affection for her, like in a fatherly way as well. It's a little gray there, but I think we knew that she, well, wasn't just pure evil, like she was basically kind of being, but to see her be able to like work Cobra Kai from the inside and like have someone in Devon to be able to try to reach out to her and for that to come in and for her to help take them down at the end was a not unpredictable, but it was interesting.
That's an interesting storyline too, in terms of like storyline relationship in terms of Tori and Kreese, because you see in a earlier season why Tori is that way with Kreese is that she's getting hit on by that landlord while she's at a vulnerable spot,
Mm-hmm.
and that even though she could kick the crap out of him, he can then pursue legal action and like just decimate her life. So she feels trapped in that way, and Kreese is able to come in and be a savior for her while also like not imposing his will on her and like, okay, now I'm the new person you report to, but it's like, I've got your back. So you can see why she's devoted and loyal to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I like what you said too. And we talked a little bit about this even with Kreese and Johnny when we talked last week about villains, that they have a unique relationship where Kreese, you're kind of left wondering like, what does he get out of that relationship? How much does he actually care about Johnny? And you see a little bit with his therapy that maybe he's not just playing Johnny,
Mm-hmm.
that he really does believe the stuff that he's saying of Johnny's like his
Yeah.
best pupil and the one that he actually really respects and admires.
Yes. And obviously he was just completely playing the therapist, but I think the easiest way to play it would be to actually talk about things that are real.
Yeah.
So you never know. I mean, I don't think Terry Silver cares about anyone else but himself, but I
Yep.
don't know. It's not as clear with Kreese, which is I think why we had Kreese on the list last week instead of Terry Silver.
Yeah. Kreese is definitely the better villain. And it like the limited screen exposure he had on in this season
Mm-hmm.
clearly showed the show is better with Kreese in it. Like we even talked about how the first season didn't have Kreese except for a cameo at the end where it's like setting up season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since he came on the show, he's been that guy that like he's fun to root against, and he has enough going for him that you're like, okay, I can see where you like like his whole storyline the last season of in Vietnam, no, 2 seasons ago in Vietnam, and his
Mm-hmm.
experiences there, how they shaped him, like you can understand, but it doesn't mean that you're on his side. So they do a
Yeah.
really good job with Kreese of keeping him on the villain side and while also humanizing him enough.
Yeah. Definitely.
All
So
right.
Matt, did you say who your MTA is? Your most teen award?
Most interesting team.
And
I would
my
say right now would be Robbie.
okay.
I last season was a little, I can't remember which was the season that he got arrested at the beginning and then he was in jail for a little bit. That was season like 3, right?
I think 3. Yeah, because then didn't Daniel and Johnny both go to visit him?
Yeah, because that was the season I felt the most like this is stupid. Where because that was after season 2 where he kicks him over the railing, and so he's on the run for that. That's why he
Yeah.
got arrested. Yeah, so season 3 was like the this sucks, and then him like being so pro Cobra Kai, and like
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was easy for him to fall back into that, and that it wasn't as interesting until this season where it's like he's able to have the light shine on on what's going on himself. And that finally, now that Johnny is actually giving him time and appreciation by taking him to Mexico with him and treating him like an adult and having honest conversations, even though he knows that he's not perfect and he's going to keep screwing up, that Robbie has responded well to that. And then he can also see like the cyclical nature of just buying into revenge, and that's why he wants to help with Kenny, and why he cares about that relationship.
I think early on Robbie was just like waiting for everybody to abandon him, like whether it was Johnny or Daniel or anybody. So anytime someone said anything he didn't like, he just immediately was like, "Oh, you're just abandoning me like everybody else. You don't care about me," and ran off, did his own thing, and that got old. And I think, like you said, with Johnny bringing Robbie to Mexico with him, he kind of showed that he can have that fatherly role to both Robbie and Miguel, and it doesn't take away from the other. Like, just because he cares about Robbie doesn't mean he doesn't care about Miguel, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true parenting too. And I actually, it is still cheesy, but having Robbie and Miguel fight it out to be, because they are like the next generation, Daniel and Johnny. Like that's so to have them fight it out because of their differences, and then after they get done with that fight, and also Robbie, like, because like when they got up on that second level, I was like, oh, are they gonna have him kick Robbie over the edge, and like for Miguel to pull back?
I saw that coming. Like, I knew they weren't gonna actually have him fall over, but like I figured, okay, this is gonna be a flashback, and they're not going to want to repeat that because that was traumatic for both of them.
Yeah.
And again, that's what happened. And then he pulled the punch and didn't fly off.
And it's a weird choice, but I guess I get it. I do like that afterwards they were able to bro it up a little bit more, because we haven't seen that yet. And you want to root for both Robbie and Miguel. And so when they're against each other, it's harder to root like for one over the other. But when they're working together for a common purpose, then it was a better relationship.
Yeah. I wanted to say the most interesting one would have been Hawk and Dimitri, but they didn't have a whole lot to do this season. They were just kind of there.
Yeah.
After Hawk came back from Cobra Kai just being a jerk, then like they're rootable and they serve a purpose in the fights, but their story is kind of wrapped up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and they suffer from what I'm going to call the Stranger Things syndrome, where it's like they add all these new characters and new characters and new characters, and then some of these core characters are like, oh, what do we do with them? Well, this isn't their season. They're going to kind of be on the sidelines. They're there, but they're not going to have any growth.
And while we're talking about the teenagers and Hawk specifically, one of the most cringy, like, really, you're doing that kind of moments was when they had the episode at the water park.
Yep.
Like you have to have your big dojo versus dojo, I'm tougher than you are competition with a water slide competition. Who can go down the fastest? That's what it is.
That just felt like the stakes of like a 90s sitcom after school program. Yeah. Like I would totally see that be like we have to do this on like a Saved by the Bell episode or something.
Exactly. That could easily have been a Saved by the Bell episode. It was like, and even beyond just the water, which like, of course they're not going to fight, but can they both just enjoy the water park? They're like, it's my water park. You can't come here because you're not the cool kids. And the lifeguards did nothing. We're
going to kick you guys out. Maybe you should have done that like 20 minutes ago, man. This has clearly been spiraling. No.
And then Sam was the one lying back like, I didn't want to do this. Like,
how do you feel about, I think it's Alex, the Rousseau's other kid?
Yes, I believe so.
How do you feel about his arc? Because they forgot Anthony. Thank you. Yes. They forgot about him for like 2 seasons. There's like, oh yeah, he exists, and then they make him like a bully last season. Yeah, and now they're trying to make him sympathetic again.
Well, the last time we did an episode on Cobra Kai was only after seasons 1, 2, and 3, I believe, and that was one of my complaints. I said they have this other kid, they don't do anything with it, and that's one of my pet peeves. Sometimes when the show has a younger sibling, I say either do something with the sibling or don't have a younger sibling. And they took him a few seasons, but they actually did something. I liked what they did with him and making him a bully. Coming from that, so it's not just the LaRussos are the good guys. Like, no, sometimes the LaRussos can be the bad guys, and like it or not, he's part of Kenny's like villain origin story because he got bullied by Anthony, and even though he's trying to make amends, he can't undo what he did. It makes
Yep.
for an interesting story.
Okay, let's jump to adults. We
Mhm.
talked a lot about the kids, and we hit on Kreese for a little bit.
Yeah.
But the bad guy of the story is Terry Silver, and like I said at the beginning, Kreese is the better bad guy. This whole like I want to take over all of I want Cobra Kai to be this international thing. And then even the international storyline when like they're rigging it in front of the judges and the one ref is clearly corrupt. It's like these guys have seen the best karate in the world and like they're these premier karate judges and they can't tell when the ref is being overtly biased. Come on.
Yeah, that's a little bit too much, and it kind of becomes a lot not interesting when, of course, Terry Silver until the very end is in control of everything. He's buying everybody off. He's one step ahead of everybody all the time. It's like it's almost like he's watered down to be like a Disney villain. Like he's twirling his mustache, like, "Ooh, I'm so great! Look at me." Whereas with Kreese, he lost occasionally every now and then. Like it was actually a chess match. Whereas it's just like, oh, no matter what you do, Kreese is going to pay someone and win.
That's a great point. I also felt like it was unrealistic because of the climax that they had, because of the cult like demeanor that he treated Cobra Kai with and the brainwashing he did. I don't believe a video of him admitting that they paid off judges would be what would sway these guys. I don't think the mob would churn like that. I think that they'd still be entrenched in their ways. And I like just the training of Cobra Kai.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like knowing that he's paying in their favor also would just be part of that culture that they'd be like, well, that's no mercy. We're gonna just take every advantage we can get because that's the Cobra Kai way. I don't think that there's as much honor amongst thieves there that they're implying.
It may have swayed some of them. Like I think it may have swayed Devin because Devin wasn't really like that. But I don't think it would have swayed Kenny. I don't think it would have swayed anybody. I think it was, and now going into the next season, we always had at least one teenager who was on the other side, whether it was Tori or Robbie or Kenny or Devin. There's no teenagers left on the Cobra Kai side. So are we just going to see all the teenagers actually enjoying themselves at the water park for once?
They go back to the water park. Water park redux. This time it's personal. I don't know. Like they made it obvious that they're like, well, it's too soon for us to like clearly state our allegiances and everything and be on the same side. So like they're gonna have to toy with that idea of like, well, who are we gonna make as bad guys next season? Or like the whole thing that they started on of just being misinterpreted because at the beginning of the season or at the beginning of the series, it was Cobra Kai was the good guys and Miyagi-Do wasn't the bad guys, but they were also there. So they might be going back to those roots and then have Kreese as that wild card.
Yeah. You also think that the whole series wouldn't have happened if Daniel would have just not freaked out about Cobra Kai coming back? Like Johnny was just going through a midlife crisis. Just let him have his karate. You have an entire career and family. Just do your thing. And then no one would have had to have any of this happen. It would have been not as interesting for us to watch, but in universe, it would have been better.
Yeah, I mean, but that at the same time, you can make that argument for all of the superhero movies, and like we need those. We want those to exist. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, what is his name from Okinawa? What is
Chosen?
Chosen, thank you.
I love Chosen. Go ahead.
I like his character and I like his comments and everything, but the whole Terry Silver fight and then getting sworded to death, I feel like I know this show isn't the type that's going to have these serious stakes. I mean, we had a kid get paralyzed and then magically he's fine. So I get that the show isn't going to kill off any characters, but I was like, if they're going to do it, that's the time to do it. They had their moment. They even gave Chosen like that stereotypical thing of like, well, let me wrap this up with this girl and let me be like, oh, I want to come back and I want to love you and I want us to be together, just to make the gut punch of him dying mean more. But then he shows up and they don't even go to the hospital first.
No.
He takes him out of there. He's like, let's go to this Cobra Kai place and oh, you're kind of dying, but we need to stop here first.
It was cheesy, but I loved the line. It's like, it's just a flesh wound. Yeah, but it's all of your flesh.
It is funny. It's like, yeah, you got to know what this show is, and you've got to like
Mhm.
turn off your brain a bit for that. But it does. It's
Yeah.
hard for it to not take you out of the show every now and
When they go to Terry Silver's, it's Chosen, Johnny, and Mike Barnes. It's the three villains from the three Cobra Kai movies.
then. That is true. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Barnes, this out of the blue guy, like, yeah, I'm back. You burnt my store down, but I'm gonna go on a drunken bender and steal a limo.
Which he had to know that was Terry Silver. Like, the whole thing they talked about earlier, and they're still going after Daniel. I suppose if Daniel hadn't gotten involved, nothing would have happened.
And I think that's the point that they're going with. I think that he knew it was Terry Silver who burned down his place, but it's like, because you got me involved, you made me a target, so I'm taking it out on you because you're more vulnerable than Terry is.
Oh, but when they introduced him to, it was just like a sitcom, and we all saw it coming. When he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this and this," and of course, it makes it sound like they're gonna be taking someone like a hitman, but then it's talking about furniture. I didn't know it was gonna be furniture, but I knew that was gonna be the joke. That he's not talking about being a hitman. It's like we were in an episode of Three's Company for a little bit with the misunderstandings.
And Chosen versus Mike Barnes in that episode is the most forced fight that I think we've had. Where, like, no, guys, why are you fighting in a furniture store? You know, like, come on, this isn't right. You guys know that you need to talk.
That was another good Chosen moment, though, when Daniel tells him, "Sorry, it was just a misunderstanding." He's like, "Oh, whoops," and like he beat out like 4 guys outside.
That was funny. I will give it that.
That's what I like about Chosen. He's like so over the top and eager to fight and like eager to like be loyal. It's like he's a dog who's been trained to do karate.
What a comparison.
And the scene when he was with the kids doing the protect the egg, of course that set up at the end with the, like, protect the egg with the computer. But that scene was actually really funny.
I 100% agree. That was a great scene. That was one of my favorite training of the season. They didn't spend too much time training, or at least showing that training. They showed plenty of like the Cobra Kai training, but they didn't give us a lot of Miyagi-Do training. But speaking of Miyagi-Do, let's go ahead and pivot to Ralph Daniel. There you go.
Yes.
Like, what's his character's name? Daniel LaRusso's story. Because his wife was kind of just along for the ride with it. It was really more his arc. She didn't change too much. No. So how did you feel about how his arc played out?
I liked it. His arc was kind of the same, though. It's his same thing. Like, he was obsessed with Johnny, then he was obsessed with Kreese, then he was obsessed with Terry Silver. He's always over the top, like thinking this bad guy, and like if he gets in control, he's going to be like the end of the world. Which the only one of those which is kind of true would be Terry Silver, I think.
I think he was a little too emotional for me. Like the melodramatic is the word I'm talking about.
Yeah,
or thinking that when he got beat and he saw what's going on with Terry Silver, that to him it was like everything's falling apart. The world's falling, like the sky is falling, sort of thing. And I didn't like his pity party that he had. Although, like I said, I liked the swap between him and Johnny. He just doesn't do, to me, hopeless sad sack the same way Johnny did in the earlier seasons. That made me root for him. Because Daniel, I keep wanting to use his real name. Daniel should know better. Daniel has kids. Daniel has a family. He has a good life. He has like real things at stake. And not that Johnny didn't have real things at stake, but it's different when you're responsible for other people as well. And so it wasn't fun to see him just kind of get into this mopey way of like, dude, you've still got a lot that's on your plate that you need to be a man about, and you need to be a good adult about. You need to be a good dad about, a good husband. And so I didn't like that side of him. But I much more preferred the Johnny Carmen storyline.
Yeah, it was kind of funny when I think it was both Daniel and his wife and Chosen and Johnny, I'm not sure who else was there. They're all like strategizing against Cobra Kai, and someone's like, "Does anybody work here?" Because they're at the auto dealership.
Yeah. Yeah, they got meta there. Meta. So speaking of Johnny Carmen, we'll jump into theirs and then we can talk about anything else that we liked on this show. Johnny and Carmen having a kid. I like those stakes and I like what it did to Johnny and I like what it did for him and his ex and how they were able to talk about it as adults and how he was able to connect. It's like it's great to see Johnny getting to a spot when he's got his life together and that he is able to pull himself out of the melodrama that is this show, even though he kind of gets sucked back into it
Yeah.
by the end of the season.
Yeah. And while we're on the subject of Johnny, even though I know it was just 100% for laughs, but Johnny as an Uber driver was hilarious.
That was good. Can you play Billie Eilish? Oh yeah, I got it right here. It puts on Billy Idol.
I can't eat a cold hamburger. Yeah, you can. I've done it tons of times.
Or like, yeah, like he's the worst Uber driver. I love that. That's a great montage. That's one of those things that we love about Johnny. He's like, if that happened to you, you'd hate this guy. But because we know how dumb he is, it's just fun to laugh along
Yeah.
at his idiocy.
Well, when I was watching that, I actually thought about our podcast. I was like, if we by chance ever did who would be the worst Uber drivers, I think Johnny would probably make our list.
Oh yeah. Meredith from The Office would be up there.
All right. Are we really going to do this? Probably not. But
I don't know who would be worse. I feel like Meredith, like at least Johnny has enough control. I think Johnny, even though he would suck as a driver, at least has enough awareness on the road to not get you killed. Whereas Meredith, like she can easily she doesn't know what's going on. She could be drunk while she's driving. She
probably is drunk while she's driving.
Probably is. She's got a permabuzz.
There you have it. There's our sub podcast, Worst Uber Drivers.
That 2-minute episode. Tell your friends about it.
The only thing I have left is we talked about it a little bit. I wasn't a huge fan of what's her name, the new karate lady who flies in to work with Kreese.
What's her deal? What is she getting out of this relationship?
I said Kreese, but I meant Terry Silver. But yeah, what was that all about? I mean, and she was way intense too. Like, are people realizing this is an after-school program for karate?
I have come because I want to see you kill each other. Okay,
You're
lady.
Not training
first of all,
Navy SEALs.
You need to cool it a little bit here.
Also, are parents signing up and like releasing waivers for this? Like,
I mean, I bet they are, but they shouldn't. They like how do you have that? I've been to when I was a kid, I was in Taekwondo, and I can't tell you how many practices my parents were at least like half of them. Mm-hmm. So it's like the fact that sure I wasn't a teen at that point, but still like the fact that we don't have any parents just watching this from the side, like that is unreasonable. You'd have at least one or two helicopter parents who are like, I want to see my son and how he kicks and all this sort of, and for them to like be like, no, this isn't okay. That there is no way that this could exist on Earth in the way that it is. No way.
See, this show is in the middle. It's not like completely cartoony. Like they actually do get into real fights, real situations. There's real drama. But at the other end, it's not completely. There is a little bit of campiness and a little bit of over dramatic and silliness. Like you'd have to suspend your disbelief for a little bit. It's kind of right in the middle, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when it comes to like, oh, what about the police? Like they try and give a little bit, they'll lampshade it a little. Like the whole storyline with I'm forgetting his wife's name, but when she did a restraining order against Kreese and found out he had a restraining order against her, it's like showed, oh yeah, the police aren't going to be involved with this because he's able to spin that, blah blah blah. Like, okay, I get it, but still, there's a lot more than just that one time.
Yeah, and. True. Yeah. And you're talking about not taking things too seriously. We have to talk about Stingray coming back.
I love Stingray. I love that actor. He is so great.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I love him or hate him. I mean, he's great, but I don't know in universe. Why is a 30-year-old guy joining a dojo for children?
The same reason why a 50-year-old guy is trying to wrestle control away from another 50-year-old guy for Dojo for Children. Well,
But
maybe not the same reason, but
but at least they're the teachers.
there's clearly some issues there. Like all of these adults are like, this is my fulfillment, this is my identity. Like, dude, it's just karate. You like you barely touch the person and you get a point for the round, and you do that a couple of rounds. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, but also even before he got arrested for the fight in season 2, didn't he also host a party for teenagers and serve alcohol to them?
Yes.
And
And you're telling me that like that is the most believable thing, that a character like Stingray would be attracted to this sort of dysfunctional establishment. Like those adults exist everywhere you go. The ones are like, hey, this is the glory days. Let me also, or like that they never had those glory days when they were there. So like, let me relive my teenage years again, but this time I'm cool.
pretty sure
Like,
he would have gotten caught.
I mean, yeah, that's you're not wrong. But no, he is kids. If you know anyone that exhibits the signs of Stingray, stay far away. If you're under 18, do not go near this person. Maybe just always have an adult with you that you can trust whenever you're near them. Just for safety's sake. All right. Anything else about this season that we didn't get on? We didn't talk about where we think we're gonna go next season. We didn't really talk about what happened at the end and with John Kreese and his escape. We didn't hit on any of those yet.
Okay, well, with John Kreese, like I honestly I didn't really see it coming. I thought that he actually died. I thought maybe that was just like his like I'm just gonna go out with a fight and die. Maybe I'm dumb for not seeing that coming, but
Yeah.
I don't know where they're gonna go because what is he gonna do? Because what was John Kreese's goal? Because expanding Cobra Kai was all Terry Silver.
John Kreese is, yeah, Terry Silver was more about like prestige and legacy of Cobra Kai, and John Kreese was about like the army of Cobra Kai, and like not to draw comparisons to Hitler, but like a Hitler youth type. Like these are my like whatever power trip that is for all these teens to be under your control,
Yeah,
and when you jump they ask how high, that whole idea. And so knowing like that's kind of his personality and that's his desires of like it doesn't make sense for him to try and step back in to take Cobra Kai, especially being on the run. So it's going to have to probably come down to something to do with controlling Johnny and going back into the one-on-one, like how can I still be your teacher even though you hate me.
yeah. And do you think that we're going to see Terry Silver in jail, and is he going to escape, and then it's going to be back and forth every?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think that Terry Silver was a fine detour. I get that when you don't want to write yourself in a corner, so you're like, we can get him. Let's try a season, 2 seasons with him as a bad. And but to know what we know, that this it's clearly better with John Kreese at the wheel of the villain.
I think so too. And then the other big question is, what is going to be the teen drama? Because now they're all on the same side.
Yep. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that earlier. Of there's gonna be some riffs still that aren't easily changed. And that one, like, is it Devin, who's the guy who's been there since like who beat up Miguel in the first episode?
Kyler.
Kyler, thank you. Kyler is the one that's like he has never had any redeeming arc, even though in the final episode he was like all the teams were against Terry. So it's like that's the only redemption that we've seen of Kyler at all. And even then, that's very light. Kyler is still a jerk. He's never grown.
No, Kyler, I think he just did that for peer pressure. He didn't want to be the only one.
Yeah.
Because also way back in the day, remember he was trying to sleep with Sam too.
Yeah. So we're going to still have teen drama, and some of it is going to be where it's like mutual respect sort of fighting, and others are going to be a little bit more like that Kyler versus whoever fighting. There's still a lot to unpack with the teen drama, but I really don't like the other seasons. They gave you a nice blueprint of where they're going to go. Like you knew last season was going to be all about training for the All Valley, and that this season was all going to be about how Terry has taken over and Kreese is in jail and the threat of Terry Silver in charge of Cobra Kai. We don't really have a good context apart from just knowing Kreese is going to do something and he's come back as the main guy.
And Daniel's going to overreact about it. and Johnny's got to be
No,
Johnny.
never. Daniel's very level-headed. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I do like how I think her name is Amanda, Daniel's wife. It's kind of the
Yes.
voice of the audience sometimes. Like, really, more karate? I mean, at one point she did get involved and she did realize that Terry Silver was a bad guy, but a lot of times she's the one realizing you're all freaking out over nothing.
And I said she had no growth, but really her growth this season was to go from like, I'm not on your side, Daniel. You are being too overdramatic about it. To you're right. Someone does need to stand up to Terry and being on Daniel's side, along with the other employees at the car place.
Mhm.
The car place. What the whatever it is, the auto shop dealership. There's the word I was looking for. Dealership.
Yep.
I know English. I feel like my words tonight are just like barely. They're like hiding in my brain. Like I'm here and you're aware of me, but I'm not gonna make my way to your tongue very quickly. What?
Who's got the weird analogies?
All right. Well, that's it. Cobra Kai. That's what this show does to me. All right. I put myself through this for your enjoyment. You're welcome, America. And apparently France. We have some people in France who listen to us. So
If you're in France and listen, email us.
we.
But do it in English because I don't speak French. I suppose Google can translate. Email us in whatever language you want.
Yeah, you know what? If you want Croatian, email us in Croatian. We'll look it up. All right. So last week we had a great episode. By the way, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, listen to last week's episode. It was really good. It's a lot of fun. We did like a bracket style villain versus villain, 32 villains. And we did one-on-one matches all the way until we came up with who is the greatest villain of all time on TV. One of the 32 that we had was John Kreese, but there are a lot of others that we talked about. And we were joined by some special guests. So make sure you listen to that if you haven't already. But the trivia that we had last week is we did talk about one of the other villains on that list, and that was Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And Paul mistakenly mentioned that Giancarlo Esposito was playing a man from Chile or from Colombia, but really it's from Chile. And if Brian wasn't having technical difficulties, he would have corrected us then. No one else corrected
difficulties. Just I wasn't there. It's okay. You know what? I'm gonna bust down the fourth wall.
Oh no!
The recording last week went long, and I had to go to work. So we recorded the end where we say our names first, and then I left. And then, so if you listen back, I don't speak at all during the trivia question there because I wasn't there. And I'm the one who listened to it later with editing. I'm like, guys, he's Chilean, not Chilean, not Colombian.
So, I mean, Brian was only gone for like 3 or 4 minutes of it, so he was there for like all the podcast.
I was there for most of it. Yeah.
So he would have corrected us. Actually, he did. He did mention it to us. I should have caught it, but I was busy trying to just close the whole thing down. And Paul should have caught it, and Mike should have caught it. Anyway, so
Mike doesn't watch the show.
Well, Mike should have. He still should have caught it. He should have known. This is all on Mike right now. It's all on his shoulders. So we talked about how he is Chilean in the show, but what is his actual nationality? And I thought you were gonna answer.
Oh, so no, I got it. He is Danish. He's from Denmark, born in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Yep. I was gonna make a joke about because for some reason my mind went to being Dutch instead of Danish. I'm like, oh wait, that's the Netherlands. So I was gonna make like the joke from Friends. I was like, well, the Pennsylvania Dutch are from Pennsylvania. But apparently even I don't know where the Dutch are. This is where my mind is tonight, guys. So all right. So that was last week's trivia. He is actually Danish. Amazing. Like didn't see that coming at all. Anyway, so this week's trivia is also about the villain, Thomas Ian Griffin, who plays Terry Silver. And he actually, for a while before he was on Cobra Kai, he had retired from acting like mid 2000s or like 2006, 2007, something like that. What was he doing after he retired from acting before coming back for Cobra Kai?
He was creating a set of dojos to take over the world.
He was. Except for they're all made out of Lego. And so he was very ineffectual. All right. So that is your trivia for next week. Speaking of next week, we are wrapping up our series that we've been doing about The Office, where we've been going season by season. And so we are finishing up with seasons 8 and 9, also known as the garbage seasons. But actually, as I'm rewatching them, there is a little bit more treasure there than I had at once thought. So we're going to talk about what are some of the best parts of it, worst parts of it, like we've done on the other episodes. And we're joined by the Andrews. So we have Andrew Umquist, who we haven't had for a little while. I think the last time might have been with our office when we ranked all the characters.
Yep.
And then we also have Andrew Brower, who we had for the Halo show when we talked about that. So,
so we'll have him on for a better show.
For a much better show, absolutely. So we're joined by the Andrews next week. It's going to be great. Make sure you're listening to it. You're not going to want to miss it. But until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.